This episode contains spoilers for Kirby and the Forgotten Land. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Cinephile Gamers Podcast. I am your host, Bo Smith, and I am coming at you with another completed game, Kirby and the Forgotten Lands. I know what you're thinking, and yes, I am very much a hardcore gamer. You know, most people don't think that Kirby is cool and his games are essentially just for little kids, but you tell me how many other video game protagonists go up against literal gods like Kirby does. The only other one that's coming to my mind is Kratos from the God of War series, and now my credibility is ruined because I just compared Kirby to being as powerful as Kratos. Okay, well, let's just go ahead and jump into the game. We open up to a vortex appearing over Kirby's home of planet Popstar, where he and all of its inhabitants get sucked in. Kirby awakens in a world pretty similar to our own, actually, except there's no people in it. Just the beasts of the land, and buildings are collapsing, covered in vines and other kinds of overgrowth. Think Last of Us, but a more bright and cheery color palette. As Kirby explores this new world, he sees that the Waddle Dees are being captured and attempts to rescue them. And in the process, he rescues a creature named Elfalin, who accompanies him on his adventure and explains different things about the world. It's a pretty simple storyline, it doesn't need to be more complicated than that for a Kirby game. Now, on to the gameplay. It seems pretty odd to put Kirby in a post-apocalyptic world that mirrors our own, but I quickly looked past that because I enjoyed the level design of this game a whole lot. You explore a wide array of settings from abandoned malls to empty but lively amusement parks, cities covered in a frozen tundra, and even a city that has an active volcano in it. The music in this game is absolutely fantastic. You will no doubt find a couple of tracks from levels that you play and get them stuck in your head pretty quickly. For the main crux of the game, you will go from level to level on a world map that you can fly around on, typically playing at least 5 levels and then fighting the boss of the area before unlocking a new part of the map. Levels are pretty linear, but there are lots of areas to explore in them. If I'm not mistaken, I think this is Kirby's first foray into a 3D adventure game outside of Kirby Air Ride in the GameCube. Side note, does anyone else remember how fun that game was? Anyways, being in a 3D space, Kirby no longer is confined to just moving left or right, and many of the levels have secret routes in them that lead you to bonus rooms. Each level has a set of goals that you can complete that are optional. The main goal is to complete the stage and rescue the 3 Waddle Dees at the end of the level. There are a few additional Waddle Dees hidden throughout the level that you can find as well. There are also optional objectives like finding a secret room, or collecting certain items, or defeating a mid-boss with a specific ability, which will give you an additional Waddle Dee upon completing the level. You only need a set number of Waddle Dees to get access to the boss at each area, but rescuing all of them will get you a completion bonus, which we'll talk about later on. There are also smaller challenge levels on the world map called Treasure Road levels. These are time challenges that require you to use a specific ability and complete it as fast as possible. Doing so will net you a rare stone which can be used to upgrade copy abilities. Like I had mentioned earlier, many people see the Kirby series as easy games that are meant for children. However, I don't like to see them that way. They're great games for casual players or for new gamers that offer basics on how most platforming games operate. When you start this game, you will be presented with 2 difficulty options, Spring Breeze mode or Wild mode, and this is the first time a Kirby game, I think, or at least the ones that I've played, that have had a difficulty option. The first option gives the player more health and easier enemies, while the latter option will give you less health and enemies have more health, but you do get more coins and better rewards for it. You can change the difficulty at any point, but honestly, Wild mode is not that challenging. I only died once in my entire playthrough and was on the final boss of the main story. But you do get a challenge with some of the late game bosses if you choose this option. There is an option to play this game with 2 players, but I didn't have the chance to experiment with that at all, so I played it all single player. But even just playing by myself, it was a really fun time, and I was really impressed by how well Kirby works in the 3D space. His normal run speed is actually fast, so traversal in the level isn't slow like I had originally suspected going into the game. His floating ability is nerfed in this game, which, in the grand scheme of things, is probably the best thing because otherwise you could hover around the entire stage and not be bothered to do anything else. You'll only be able to stay afloat for a short time, and there is a certain threshold that you can't fly past unless you climb up a higher platform. It balances the game pretty well and you don't rely on it too often. As in previous entries, inhaling certain enemies will give you that enemy's ability, and you can use that in combat. There are 10 returning abilities plus 2 ones. They include Sword, Fire, Ice, Tornado, Bomb, Crash, Needle, Cutter, Hammer, Sleep, and the 2 new ones, Ranger and Drill. While exploring, you will occasionally find blueprints that will allow you to upgrade copy abilities at the weapons shop. Some of these upgraded powers are nearly game-breaking and can make you invincible if you use them right, so there's no reason not to hunt every one of them down. After you complete the main story, you'll be able to power up your abilities for additional star coins and rare stones as well, so if you weren't already wrecking shop before, you should be able to now. The last addition to the Forgotten Land is the Mouthful mode. After getting sucked through the vortex, Kirby's inhale ability got stronger, and he can now suck up some objects from around the world like cars or vending machines. This is akin to the capture ability from Mario Odyssey. You'll suck up certain objects that will allow you to open up new paths or get you across some platforming segments. Each one of these Mouthful modes is absolutely hilarious to watch and useful to you on your adventure. Outside of the levels, you do have access to a hub area called Waddle Dee Town. This is where all your rescued Waddle Dees will hang out. There isn't much to do initially, but the more you rescue, then the more the town expands. This is where you have your weapons shop, a food store to heal your health, an item shop to give you temporary stat boost, and a couple of places to play mini games to earn extra star coins. There's also the Coliseum, which is essentially where you have the boss rush mode. These gauntlets are a great way to test your progress, and you get great rewards. The first tournament actually gives you the Meta Knight blueprint, which is by far my favorite copy ability of the game. It is the third sword upgrade that gives you Meta Knight's mask in really fast and strong sword attacks. It's definitely worth having early on in the game. This game has a big emphasis on collectibles as well, much like the platformers of the past. We've already talked about blueprints for copy abilities, as well as the Waddle Dees you need to rescue, which adds up to about a total of 300. The last collectible of the game are the Gotcha Capsules. These are little figurines of Kirby, allies, enemies, and items that are found throughout the game. There are 4 volumes of Gotcha Capsules, and those will expand as you progress through the game. There are a few scattered in each level, and each one you find is always randomized. If you get tired of playing through levels trying to grind them out, you can always go to one of the Gotcha machines located in the Waddle Dee Town. These cost a certain amount of star coins for each spin, and is random what you get. Now let's get into the end of the game and what comes after finishing the game. Spoilers ahead if you don't want the ending of a Kirby game to be ruined for you. At one point in the game, you encounter King Dedede, who is being mind-controlled into fighting you. He captures Elfilin and escapes. You catch back up to him in the last area of the game where, after defeating him again, he finally breaks free of the mind control. As you go into the elevator that leads up to a secret laboratory, you finally encounter the leader of the Beast Pack, Leongar, with a weird alien creature right behind him. He explains that this alien arrived on the planet a long time ago and sought to destroy the world. However, the people who used to live on the planet captured it and used its powers to travel to new worlds, which is why everything is abandoned. Soon after, the beast took over the land, and Leongar used the alien to transport a workforce that could bring back the alien's power, and also capture the missing half of the alien, which turns out to be Elfilin. After you fight Leongar, the alien escapes and creates this giant ooze monster that kind of reminds me of The Thing. While escaping, Elfilin gets absorbed into it, and the monster regains its true form, Fecto Elfilis, a creature that can easily warp reality. Kirby is able to defeat Elfilis and remove Elfilin from it. But as soon as he does, Elfilis summons Planet Popstar in order to crush the planet and kill everyone, all Final Fantasy VII style. Kirby finds a big rig and inhales it and tries to rush after Elfilis, which is one of the funniest sequences in the game and is really fun to play. And with Elfilin's power, you're able to destroy the final boss and break through the vortex, landing back onto Planet Popstar. Using the last of its power, Elfilin closes the portal between both worlds and says goodbye to Kirby. But this is a kid's game, so it can't end on a sad note, we all know that. Elfilin survives and is able to open a new portal between the two worlds, and the characters reunite. Happy ending as the credits roll with pictures of their adventure and what happens after. But wait, what's this? Post-game alert. Yeah. There is actually a significant portion of this game that's dedicated to post-game material. I won't explore the full story of what happens next, but the basic gist is that a new portal opens up in Waddle Dee Town into this dreamlike world. In it, you're tasked with playing 6 new levels and finding pieces of Leongar's soul in order to save him. The story gets a little bonkers from there, but this is where the game steps up in difficulty. Each level is a remixed version of each area of the game. It takes one section from each level and changes some of the layout and enemy placement. The levels are longer in general, and each one ends with a remixed version of the boss of each area. They come in with a new design, moves, and they attack with a lot more ferocity and deal greater damage. Defeating the final boss will give you the final blueprint, the Morpho Knight Sword ability, which is by far the strongest ability in the game, bar none. Finally, after beating the main game and the post-game stories, the Coliseum unlocks 2 new tournaments. The final tournament may even give you a run for your money, since it has remixed versions of all the bosses, plus 2 exclusive boss fights. I highly recommend powering up your favorite copy ability and buying all the temporary stat boosts you can before taking on this challenge. I personally got really lucky and beat the final boss with just a sliver of health remaining. And that final boss, if you're not prepared, hits hard and quick with some scary moves. You'll easily start to panic and run around like a chicken with its head cut off. For the completionists out there, or for those who want to get the most out of their money, I feel like doing everything is worth the time and effort. Here's what it takes to get a 100% completion in this game. You have to complete the entire story. You'll need to collect all of the Waddle Dees and pieces of Leon's soul from all of the levels. You'll need to collect and create all of the copy ability blueprints, but you do not need to fully power up them, thank goodness. You'll also complete all of the Treasure Road levels, complete all of the minigames in the Waddle Dee Town, win all 3 of the Coliseum tournaments, and finally, collect all of the gacha figurines. And that last one is more than likely going to be the last thing you do, and by far the most time-consuming part. Some of the capsules are locked behind certain requirements like winning a tournament, or completing a minigame, or won't even unlock until you get past a certain part of the story. Even then, you still have to go to the capsule machine and spend hundreds of star coins at a time until you get the one you need. There is a Waddle Dee that will trade you capsules that you don't have for rare stones, but this is really a last resort, especially if you're using those rare stones to upgrade your abilities. Your completion of all these tasks will be signified by pictures on the wall of your home in Waddle Dee Town. After getting all the gacha figures and 9 photos on your wall, the game will show you a screen that announces that you have done everything there is to do and will give you the final photo on the wall. And then you've essentially done everything there is to do. I think the Forgotten Land is the Kirby series equivalent to the Mario series Super Mario Odyssey. I know I've made that comparison already earlier, but I really do believe that. It is a grand adventure that takes Kirby in a brand new direction and improves upon the franchise as a whole. The art direction and level design is really cool, and you get immersed in this new world. I didn't even mention it earlier, but some of the mid-bosses from previous games get a great facelift and almost look like brand new enemies. It's a great spin on traditional Kirby. Gameplay is very fun all around, and while you try to stick with your favorite power-up most of the time, the game does force you to change it up for certain sections or objectives, so you do get a variety of options and can experiment with some elements. You can feel overpowered late in the game, but I think that's a fun reward the game gives you for completing the story, and I've always been a fan of those types of rewards that make you ultra powerful and you can revisit early parts of the game with it. Each level is varied and has a distinct look to it, so I never feel like I'm playing the same level like I would in a new Super Mario Bros. Game. It never feels like a chore when you have to replay a level to complete a hidden objective, but the only time that does get annoying is if the objective is at the very end of a long level. The only other major criticism I have is the time it takes to get all the gacha capsules. I was surprised that I did run out of star coins at one point, and I had to replay one of the tournaments a few times just so I could have enough money and rare stones to get the final capsules I was missing. This game is super fun, and it was hard for me to put down at times. If you haven't already bought this game for your Switch, then hurry up and get it. I think this is going to be one of Nintendo's best games of this year, and that's saying a lot since there's a bunch of highly anticipated titles slated for the Switch this year, like Splatoon 3, or Mario & Rabbids 2, Bayonetta 3, and Mario Strikers Battle League. I give Kirby and the Forgotten Land a 9.5 out of 10. I can easily see this winning Best Family Game of the Year at the Game Awards. So, have you played Kirby and the Forgotten Land yet? If so, what did you think of it? Follow the show on Facebook or Twitter and let me know in the comments of the show. If you are a fan of the show and want to support it, consider subscribing to a Patreon account. There are different tiers to subscribe to, and I will put out exclusive content that won't be available on the regular show. As always, thanks for tuning in, and I can't wait to see you again on the next episode.